Welcome to the Air Gaming channel. Currently, the focus for this channel will be on the card game of Yu-Gi-Oh! And more specifically, hat format, what the state of the game was during the July 2014 North American World Championship qualifier. This format has been my favorite way to play Yu-Gi-Oh! Competitively and casually for its dynamic gameplay and meta diversity. Referred to as a retro format in the Yu-Gi-Oh! Community, such as GOAT format or Edison format, hat format uses the April 2014 ban list with cards legal up to July 2014, not including YS14, the structure deck which introduced pendulum monsters into the game. On the same note of not including YS14 or any pendulum monsters, hat format is also a time before Master Rule 3. Therefore, it is the last retro format to feature drawing one card in addition to your starting 5 when going first. Also, field spells retain the Highlander rule, meaning that there can only be one in play at a time. If I activate a field spell and my opponent has a field spell in play, their field spell will be destroyed if they don't chain something like Mystical Space Typhoon on my field spell before it resolves. Based on the history of product release, the newest card you can play as of July 2014 is number 72 Shogi Rook, a Zexal promotional card. More relevantly new, we have the Realm of Light structure deck, released June 27, 2014, which created a resurgence in Lightsworn decks. The two newest sets, Primal Origin, released in May, introduced Artifact and Sylvan archetypes, while Dragons of Legend, released in April, featured powerful individual cards like Curry Bandit and Soul Charge. Between these three releases, several decks and strategies are possible to play with, but no one so powerful that they completely remove the wealth of previously possible decks from contention, like spellbook decks, which have been around since 2012. It is up for debate how many decks are competitively viable in the format, but many hat players will list at least 10 decks when considering the competitive meta. I personally think that there are very many possible strategies if you are creative with deck building, but there are certain decks you should expect to play against, so you can't get away with just playing any deck of cards. One criticism of the format is the option to play Soul Charge at a time it was so newly released the ban list hadn't touched it. So 3 Soul Charge decks are a thing. Isn't that broken? Well, yes and no. There are plenty of cards that directly or inadvertently counter Soul Charge. Also, Soul Charge needs a grave setup before it can be used, though some decks do speed this process up by purposefully sending cards to the grave. When debating whether Soul Charge is unfair or a problem card in hat format, I like to reflect on the deck that won the North American World Championship qualifier, Corey McDuffie's Hand Artifact Trap Tricks. HAT, the acronym that describes the very format it was used in. Corey's hat deck used just one copy of Soul Charge, and he emerged champion in North America. There's a lot I could say about Soul Charge, but now I'd like to take a moment to say why hat format is fun and why I enjoy it the most of all retro formats. Despite the power of a single card in Soul Charge, this version of Yu-Gi-Oh! Is much slower compared to the Yu-Gi-Oh! Of today and recent years. Duels in this format involve both players taking multiple turns to decide the outcome, providing interactive duels depending on the matchup and game state. Side decking and overall deck preparation are significant to winning matches. Perfecting one deck or trying out several decks are both options when strategizing. There's a healthy skill gap between players due to understanding rulings, how rulings affect how to use cards, and individual card interactions. Overall, Hat format provides a competitive, rewarding, and unique card game experience that's high in replay value. So why not play Hat format? There's a lot to learn about the game. Keep in mind, this format is after over a decade of Yu-Gi-Oh's progression since the genesis of the TCG in early 2002. If you're coming over from GOAT format, for example, Synchro and XYZ summoning are part of the game now. And archetypal decks have become more common. The card pool of all released cards at the time stands at 6,143 cards. To give some perspective, that's 6,143 compared to the 1,756 cards of GOAT format, the 3,687 of Edison, and the over 11,000 cards out currently. 77 cards are banned, however, making it 6,056 cards legal to deck build with. Let's look at the ban list on Format Library and use it to understand more about the Hat format meta. So here's the homepage for Format Library. We'll click on Formats, Hat format. See popular decks, leaderboard, and the ban list. 2014 ban list. I'm going to go through the forbidden cards relatively quickly because most of them have been banned for a long time. We've got the baby rulers banned though. Those have been banned within the last year of this ban list, so you can no longer play the little guys. Chaos Emperor Dragon has been banned for a long time. It's a reset button. Cyberjar is kind of like a reset button, but this is mostly banned because we don't want to play against decks that are just trying to deck us out. Empty Jar. Cyberstein, broken. Pay 5,000 to summon any fusion. It's a little too good right now, or it's always been too good. Demok is banned for a long time. Before the errata, of course. Disc Commander, this could probably be around and people probably wouldn't play it at this point, but might as well be gone. Stratos, this is probably the saddest part of the ban list. Stratos would have made heroes, at least somewhat more viable, but without Stratos, it's really hard to play elemental heroes anymore. Fiberjar is long time ban, reset button for the game, basically. This is like the reset button card. Fishboard Blaster, probably some loops this was involved in, got this on the ban list. Go Up Bulb, another tuner, just generically too strong. Another baby ruler, Magical Scientist is a long time ban. Makura, I think this lets you play traps from your hand or something like that. It's been banned for a long time. Mind Master, steal cards, I think. Something like that. Morphing Jar, back to the empty jar. Morphing Jar number 2. We're not decking anybody out. Another baby ruler. Rescue Cat. It's been replaced by Rescue Rabbit, but we'll see that later on the limited list. Sangan, long time ban. Well, actually, no, this hasn't been banned for too terribly long. I think it was at 1 not too long ago, but banned here. Sinister Serpent, definitely banned. Another baby ruler, Substitute, Tribe has been banned this whole time. Victory Dragon, a prize card. Win one game, win the match. That's it's not allowed. I'm not sure this has ever been allowed to be played. Pretty sure it's always been just a prize card. Sangan's counterpart, Witch of the Black Forest, and Yata-Garasu, because Yu-Gi-Oh! Is no fun when you can't draw. We have Thousand Eyes, Brionac, Darkstrike Fighter for game, Goyo Guardian, the best level 6 synchro for for a long time. Trishula banned. We have the only XYZ monsters to be banned. Shockmaster, definitely needed banned. Just not letting you play the game, basically. And wind-up loops, so you can discard their whole hand. Wouldn't want that. Long-time bans here for the rest of the way. We've got Brain Control, Butterfly Dagger, Card Destruction, Card of Safe Return, Change of Heart. If you don't know, these cards have been banned for a long time. Cold Wave, Confiscation, Delinquent Duo, Dimensional Fusion, all too strong in several different ways. What's hilarious is that Change of Heart is back for current players now. But we have Dragon Ravine, which is a fairly recent ban, but it's just Foolish Burial for dragons. It's pretty good. Needed to be banned. Future Fusion's been banned. Gateway of the Six, so that 6 samurais can't FTK you. Giant Trinade, long time ban. Graceful, long time ban. Harpy's Feather Duster and Heavy Storm are banned, so your back row are a little bit safer in hat format for sure because of Heavy being banned. Last Will, Mass Driver, Metamorphosis, Mirage of Nightmare, Monster Reborn, Painful Choice, all of these have been banned for a while. Pot of Avarice is no longer legal as it is in Edison format. Pot of Greed, it's just too good. Premature Burial, long time ban in Regeki, long time ban in Snatch Steal. Spellbook of Judgment, relatively recently banned because it's only been around for a couple of years, but definitely deserves its spot on the ban list, as does Super Rejuvenation, kind of in the same vein. These two cards are the same time period of being banned. These have been banned for a while. And all the traps have been banned for a while, except for Sixth Sense, which was created within the last year. And when it was released limited. So you could only play one even as it was released. And it shouldn't have even been allowed to do that because you can call 5/6, and then if you roll a 5 or you roll a 6 with your dice, you can draw 5 cards or draw 6 cards, depending on what you roll. So yeah, that shouldn't be a card. But now let's get to the more interesting limited list, as you can play these cards, but only at 1. So we have the Exodia cards, if you wish to play Exodia. Atlantean Dragoons, very powerful card for Mermail, thank goodness you can still play 1 for them. Blackluster Soldier, Envoy of the Beginning, one of my favorite cards. Such a strong card. So glad that it's at 1 this format. Gale, we've got the only limited Blackwing card. Very strong card. Probably could have been at more than 1 for this format. Blackwing's not really seen a lot of play, but yeah, solid card. Then we have the adult Dragon Rulers, the big dragons, all at 1. So Blaster, Spirit, Fire Fist. Fire Fist Spirit is limited to 1 for those Fire Fist 3.5 axis players. Coach Soldier Wolfbark for the standard rank 4 Fire Fist plays. Wolfbark can be used in other decks besides Fire Fist, however. Dandelion, Dark Arm Dragon, Debris Dragon, Deep Sea Diva, doesn't really get played because it's at 1. Genex Sally Birdman can be played in Synchro Yu-Gi-Oh variants. We have Bestiary still at 1. Kind of similar to Gale in that it could have come back to be at more than 1, but it is what it is. Gores, you want to be sneaky and play Gores. Gores doesn't see a lot of play, but that doesn't mean if your deck if your deck is compatible with Gores, then it's definitely something you could surprise your opponent with. Honest, Inzectors limited to 1, understandably. These two are spamming the field and then destroying your opponent's field. Pretty good. Magician of Faith, really, honestly, not that good at this point in the game. Magician of Faith, pretty slow, pretty weak, doesn't really get played. Even if it were at 2 or 3, I'm not sure it would be played, really. Maybe in something like Spellbooks, but... Then we have Gund at 1. This is one of the more recent limits to the game, and understandably so. Mermail was running rampant before this ban list, so I believe this is the ban list that put Wolfbark and Gund to 1. Grand Mole's been at 1 for a while. Night Assailant, I think, has been at 1 for a while. Darkness Metal Dragon doesn't really see a ton of play. Redox, Tempest, Tidal, the big dragons. Then we have the limited Rescue Rabbit, which is played in Evil Swarms, especially. And then if anything else you want to play, if you want to play vanilla dinosaurs, you could certainly do that. Not sure if it would be the best deck, but still an option. Thunder King for more anti-meta such decks, and the Wind-Up Magician. Gishkis can be played, but only 1 for the level 6 rituals. We have these 4 Synchros limited. Xian, probably the best one here that I see. Just negating spells and traps, pretty good. Formula, probably didn't want more than 1 of this for crazy synchro combos and making Quasar and such. But it is possible to make Quasar in this format relatively easily with Soul Charge. But moving on, we've got Allure, Book of Moon, Barrel from the Different Dimension, Charge of the Light Brigade, Dark Hole, very good stable card. Most decks will play Dark Hole either in the main deck or the side deck, that 1 copy. Dimensional Fissure for siding or playing anti-meta. Divine Valley, or the Mist Valley field spell, forget its name exactly, but probably some loops, something made this get on the list. Final Countdown's been at 1 for a while. Foolish, Gold Sark, starter cards, very good in very many decks. Well, Gold Sark mostly for Dragon Rulers, but Foolish is used in a lot of decks. Infernities have a couple cards limited, but definitely still a tier 1 deck. Limiter Removal, not really seeing play. Mind Control, another very good generic card that will see a lot of play. Unlike Monster Gate, not going to see that a whole lot. One Day of Peace, a little more niche, not really going to see this too often. 1 for 1, very deck specific. Probably not the most common card you'll see. Reinforcements of the Army, very common, used in a lot of decks. Very good card, but only 1. Rekindling, the 4th Soul Charge, if you will, for fire decks, pyro decks. Royal Tribute, Sacred Sword, and Spellbook Fate, sadly limited for Spellbook players. You can only play 1 Fate. Bottomless, very understandably limited. You can now search this card because of Trap Tricks for Melio, so good thing that's at 1. Ceasefire, very strong burn card. Compulsory, very great generic trap. A lot of players like Compulse. Eradicators for dark decks, Infernity Barrier, Macrocosmos, the twin brother of Dimensional Fissure, the better brother, honestly, who banishes everything, even an XYZ material detach, which Dimensional Fissure will not banish. Magical Explosion, not going to see Magical Explosion decks too often, but there's that. And Solemn Warning, very great generic trap. A lot of decks will play Solemn Warning, especially because you can't play Solemn Judgment. Soul Drain, more side deck options. Transmigration Prophecy, a generic card with a really good effect, actually. I mean, it's not as good as Macro or Soul Drain if you're talking about post-siding, but the Transmigration Prophecy can be very good if these cards would hurt your own deck. So there's that. And Torrential Tribute, another great generic trap. And Wall of Revealing Light, not the most often seen, best used for a Nurse Burn deck, if you ask me. Then we have the very short semi-limited list, but definitely still some interesting things to look at. Card Trooper at 2. Different decks can play Card Trooper, Lightsworn, Dragon Rulers. Something unique, maybe. Play Card Trooper. Chaos Sorcerer, probably not going to see this too often, although it could be played in sort of a Chaos Synchro Zombie type deck, perhaps. Lone Fire Blossom is huge for Sylvans. You will see this card if you play against Sylvans, but thankfully not as frequently because it is semi-limited. Necroface doesn't really get a lot of play. Gosh, maybe one of the only other decks I can think of that would even use Goldspark, but Goldspark being at 1, Necroface being at 2. This is pre-Pot of Desires, so you're not really going to see Grand Maju. Reborn Tengu, semi-limited, not sure why. Not being played, not that good anymore. Summoner Monk, very strong. Infernities play this card, and they play both. Tragodia, similar to Gores in that you're not really going to see it a whole lot unless someone's deck is able to play it, something like Chaos Agents or something still hanging around a couple years after its prime. Advanced Ritual Art if you're going for Herald of Perfection, most likely. Chain Strike for those chain burn plays. Heretics have only 2 of their Searcher in this format. Reasoning, not really seeing play. Infernoids have not been released yet. And then probably the most interesting thing about the semi-limited list are D-Prison and Mirror Force being semi-limited. So if you see either of them from your opponent, you can say, well, they either have a second one or they're not playing a second one. But once you've seen 2, you can say, hey, they've used 2 Mirror Force. Not going to see it again. So something to keep in mind. The irony of them both being semi-limited on this ban list is that they're both probably not as strong as several other trap options at this point in the game. But definitely still good when your opponent is not expecting them. And lastly, Ojama Trio, which does not see play. It's been a long time since we had Panda Burn in Go format. I'll put a link to the Format Library's website's homepage in the description so you can check out ban lists and deck lists for most every Yu-Gi-Oh! Retro format, including Hat. Now that we've looked at the cards that have been released but are banned or limited to only 1 or 2 copies, what's left but to start building decks and dueling? I'll be starting a series on this channel where we'll do just that. So until next time, stay frosty.